Well, you can clearly see the gunshot wound to the forehead. It's a large, gaping hole. It was really eerie.
A brutal killing.
To me, it'd be a cold-blooded murder because he was unarmed.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
It's a good possibility that he interrupted a burglary and ended up costing his life.
In a love triangle, there's always a jealous husband or a jealous wife, more than capable of killing.
This is a crime where somebody is intensely angry and saying, now I'm going to show you that you're not going to be able to get away with that.
The truth will be revealed.
We knew that we were possibly letting the killer go.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Tucson, Arizona, tucked into the southwest corner of the United States. It's a peace-loving oasis that boasts sunshine all year round.
Tucson attracts a lot of free-spirited people. There's a lot of spas, there's yoga retreats, and I think people are drawn to the warm weather there.
It's a Sunbelt city, and so Sunbelt cities are subject to more property crimes than anything else. And of course, Tucson's a hub for a lot of drugs coming up from Mexico. And so as drugs move through, crime happens.
On a warm September morning, the slow pace of the city is violently disturbed.
The neighbor was walking by and looked over and could see someone laying face up on the porch and called 911 immediately.
911, what's your emergency?
I got called out about 6 a.m. and when I got there it was about 6:30. Police officers were on the scene. The crime scene tape was up. It was a warm day, a very hot day actually. It was in September, and we had just gotten through with the monsoon season, so it was somewhat humid as well. I could see the victim laying face up on his porch. He appeared to have a large hole in his forehead. Could tell it was a gunshot wound. Blood was off to the side, pooled up, and it looked like he was in his yoga shorts and a top, tank top.
The victim is 45-year-old yoga instructor, Michael DeHakis.
Michael DeHakis was a very calm individual, and yoga was just the perfect fit for him. Not only was Michael a yoga teacher, but he worked out of his garage as a machinist.
He was an ordinary person. According to his neighbors, he was well-liked and very friendly.
Veteran detective Benjamin Jimenez is tasked with leading the investigation into Michael DeHakis' murder. They start by examining the body looking for clues.
You can clearly see the gunshot wound to the forehead. It's a large, gaping hole. Didn't appear that it was a contact wound, so we felt that it was consistent with possibly anywhere from 2 to 5 feet away from the victim when the gun was fired. And there was blood that had gone down his clothing on his legs, so he was standing when he was shot.
It was just a single gunshot, so we assumed that it was a revolver that was used. If it were a semi-automatic handgun, there would have been a bullet casing somewhere. We also noted he had some scratches on his hands. The scratches were significant, and we believed that it was a struggle inside the house.
The medical examiner in this case viewed the body there at the scene, and based on the fact that Michael was not in rigor, rigor mortis at that time. We all felt, and the doctor felt, that it was consistent with Michael dying possibly 5 to 8 hours prior to this. At this time, we are thinking that Michael died late Thursday night, early Friday morning after midnight.
To find the killer, detectives will need to unravel the final 24 hours of Michael's life.
As we make entry into Michael's house, we see that there's some broken glass in the kitchen. We're feeling that possibly the struggle occurred there in the kitchen and moved its way out the front porch, which is very close proximity to each other. The home did not appear to be ransacked. There were some stacked instruments inside the kitchen area by the kitchen door. There was an amplifier, a music stand. As I walked around the side of the house, I could see stacked instruments. There was a violin, a guitar case. It looked like Michael foiled a burglary.
Detectives believe the thieves were looking for musical instruments to sell for cash.
There were some scratches on his body that led us to believe there was some type of struggle. So we felt that he had fought with the burglars and he was shot.
And it ended up costing his life.
Investigators canvass the neighborhood, hoping to uncover information that will flesh out Michael's timeline.
Between 2:30 and 4 p.m. on Thursday, the day before Michael was killed, the neighbor could hear machines going on in the machine shop area and felt that Michael was working on something. This helps us put Michael at home just a few hours before his death. So it helps us to establish our timeline as to when he was alive and then dead. Michael lived in a low-income area, high in property crimes, theft, and burglary. We felt it was important to go into the computer database and find out if there's any known burglars in the area. We found that 2 individuals had been arrested the weekend before and were still in jail. They had stolen a guitar in one of the burglaries. So we felt that these people could be possible suspects and that we need to interview them.
The persons of interest turn out to be Joseph Keyes and David Wynn.
We find out where they live. They live in close proximity to where Michael lived. So we're fairly confident that we have a very strong lead in the case at this point.
The fact that we have a burglar in the region taking musical instruments and that the victim had musical instruments, on the surface seems to be a connection. It seems compelling, but bear in mind that musical instruments are among the most commonly stolen items in residential break-ins, and it could just be a coincidence. Does it merit exploring? Absolutely.
Coincidences quite often pay off in terms of determining what happened in events. And so a lot of the times people are found through lucky breaks.
Both Joseph and David did have prior arrests for drug use. So we felt that this possibly could be a burglary for drug money and that they were involved in Michael's death when he came home and found them.
With suspicions swirling around the burglars, Detective Jimenez leads the interrogation, hoping to get one of them to flip.
Not every rigorous interview is an interrogation. Interrogation actually entails a 9-step process designed to extract a confession from a suspect during what's usually an in-custody interview. The fact that in this case there's 2 separate offenders who can be questioned separately and played off each other gives the police an additional advantage.
In separate interviews, they both denied any involvement in any burglary. They would not speak to me and basically invoked their rights, so I couldn't speak to them any further. Our investigation doesn't stop there. Based on where they live, close proximity, what they stole in the previous burglary, I get a search warrant for their home. They lived together in about a mile away from where Michael lived.
The search reveals a shocking discovery.
I found some bloody shoes, some bloody clothing. Based on that, we're pretty excited that we possibly have a great lead in this case. So it led us to believe that they're more involved than just burglary. They could be involved in Michael's death.
Believing they have found physical evidence tying the thieves to Michael Duhakis' murder, homicide detectives send David Wynn's bloody jeans to forensics.
We know that the DNA testing is going to take about a week, but we're very confident at this point that we have the right guys in this case.
It's extremely important not to have tunnel vision. Human beings are biased by nature, and so we look for evidence to confirm our suspicions. And so people, when they're investigating crimes, really have to be careful to look for alternative evidence, alternative explanations, and challenge ourselves to do so.
Detectives push the investigation forward by checking Michael's cell phone records.
They want to find out how this person lives their life, who they're interacting with day to day, and whether there might be someone who could have the motive to want to kill them.
The phone was an old cell phone. He didn't have any recent phone calls, but the name Amber was the very first person on the phone list. I called her and left a message that I needed to talk to her about her friendship with Michael.
Amber Trudell was 28 years old, and she had moved to Tucson from New York. She was married, and she took private lessons from Michael in her yoga class.
Detectives search for Amber, hoping she can offer insight into Michael's final 24 hours.
They called her, no answer. They went to her house, no response. They didn't know where to find her. She was in the wind.
Detectives then visit her workplace at the Child and Family Resources Center and speak to her boss.
She said Amber is very reliable. She's never missed a day of work. She's a bookkeeper for this business. And the employer tells us that she left town on Thursday morning, saying that she had to get out of town. There was a family emergency. She seemed upset on the phone, and that she would be back on Monday. So Tuesday morning, she's not back yet.
Amber's boss then tells detectives something that turns the case on its head.
The employer tells us that Michael and Amber were having an affair.
The boss knew that Amber was married and that the person she was seeing was now dead. So, possible theory, jealous husband.
In a love triangle type situation, there's always a jealous husband or a jealous wife, more than capable of killing.
Detectives quickly learn the identity of Amber's husband, Justin Goodwins, a man with a shady history.
A criminal history background is done on Justin. We find a domestic violence arrest in the past involving Amber.
Domestic violence is very common. You know, it is common for people to get angry and do bodily harm to somebody that they're allegedly involved or in love with.
Given this mix of domestic violence, infidelity, anger, and other negative emotions, Justin could have, done something to harm Amber, killed her, or even Michael.
It's a very strong possibility that Justin was involved in this case. We haven't heard from Amber, so possibly he's the reason that she's missing now.
As investigators consider the theory that Justin may have killed Michael and harmed Amber, they get another surprising tip from Amber's boss.
Amber's employer tells us that there's a moving van outside of Amber's home, and she recognizes Justin in the driveway along with another male. and they're loading furniture into the moving van. This is very suspicious in nature. It appeared they're leaving town, so the red flags go up. The fact that Justin was arrested for domestic violence in the past, he could have some type of violent tendencies. We feel Justin could be dangerous to be approached with caution. We call out the SWAT team along with some detectives, and we go out there and confront Justin. Justin has a 9mm semi-automatic handgun on him. 9mm is consistent with the .38 caliber 357 used in the murder. It's very possible that that is the gun that was used to kill Michael.
Detectives send the gun to ballistics and bring the suspect, Justin Goodwins, down to the station for questioning.
He tells us that he and Amber are separating and that he was just loading his items to get out and leave town.
It's good timing that police showed up at Justin's place when they did. He's literally in the midst of packing up and fleeing town. The excuse he provides is, the relationship's gone south and he's just moving on, but this is all the makings of his getting out of Dodge.
They ask Justin if he knows about Amber's affair with Michael DeHakis.
He tells us that she has done this before to him. He talked about a time when she left him and went to visit her boyfriend in Colorado. So this was no news to Justin as far as that Amber was doing this again. He was upset with her, and that's why they were going to get a divorce.
When a spouse learns that their partner has been cheating on them, there's infidelity, or they've been unfaithful for a long period of time especially, people can become angry, even enraged. This is a crime where somebody is intensely angry and somebody's saying, you've done something, it's made me angry, and now I'm going to show you that you're not going to be able to get away with that.
I told Justin that Michael DeHakis had been murdered. And that's when you could see he got physically upset, and he was very nervous.
Investigators ask Justin when the last time he saw Amber was.
He tells us that Amber came home, it was very late. He thinks it was early morning hours on Thursday. She smelled of alcohol. He knew she'd been drinking. She was well dressed, and he felt that maybe she was out fooling around on him again. She was upset. She wasn't making sense. He says that he can't get any answers out of her other than the fact that something bad has happened. So he takes her to his parents' house in Sholo, Arizona, and then drops her off and says she needs a break for a few days. He comes back to Tucson and goes back to work because he has to be at work on Friday. At the end of the weekend, he goes back to Sholo to pick her up, sometime Sunday, and brings her back to Tucson, and that's the last he saw of her. And that's where he's being evasive with us, because I feel that he really does know where she's at, but he won't explain.
One has to question the fact that Justin places Amber out of town at the time that Michael is murdered. These two things coinciding is fishy, and you have to wonder if that was done by design.
They drill down on Justin, demanding answers.
We asked him point blank if he was involved in the murder of Michael DeHakis, and very no, arms waving type. I had nothing to do with that. I don't know what you're talking about. I was just trying to take care of Amber because I knew she was upset and knew she needed to get out of town.
When Justin says Amber's out of town, it could look like an alibi for Amber, but it could also look like Justin's protecting himself and deflecting the police from knowing that Amber's dead.
It's all suspicious. It's very confusing. Something's going on between Justin and Amber. How it's related to Michael, I'm getting feelings that it is, but I'm not sure.
Just then, the interrogation gets interrupted by a colleague.
A police officer who had Justin's property, his wallet, and his cell phone. tells me that Detective Jimenez's phone has been ringing off the hook with a number, and the officer took it upon himself to trace the number, and the number came back to a local hotel here in Tucson. We were extremely excited about this in the sense that it's possible that we have a great lead in this case.
Detectives are rushing over to the hotel because it's vital to them that they understand who has been calling and calling and calling. And when they open the door, they can't believe what they find. It's Amber, the missing wife.
Detectives have tracked down Justin's wife, Amber, unharmed and holed up in a hotel room.
That information is relayed back to me at the police station. That's when I go back into the interview room and tell Justin what we've found and the fact that I believe he is lying to me.
What detectives want to know is why.
He does explain that he feels bad that he had to lie to us because they are having problems with their marriage, but they were thinking on leaving town to get a new start. That's where he shifts his story as to getting a new start as compared to being on the verge of divorce and separating.
Police bring Amber down to the station, hoping she can shed some light on Justin's involvement in Michael's murder.
She seemed very polite and kind of wanted to know what this was all about.
We told her that Michael had been murdered. We expected some kind of response, some sadness or, at least a response of tears or something. We didn't get it.
It didn't seem very natural to me that she wasn't upset about Michael's death. She admitted she was in an intimate relationship with Michael and it had been going on for some time.
She's more concerned about, is she a suspect, than who killed Michael Dohakis, the man that she was in love with.
They ask Amber when the last time she saw Michael was.
She hadn't seen Michael in several days. She last saw him at a yoga class. Amber was evasive with us. Short answers, an attitude to like being upset, but yet, still willing to talk to us.
Investigators inquire as to whether she owns a gun. Amber admits she does.
Of course, we ask her, well, where's your gun? I don't know where my gun is, were her words. What do you mean you don't know where your gun is? Your husband tells us it's always in your purse. I don't know, I haven't seen it in a while. She had body language that indicated that there was a lot of withholding of information. Eyes down a lot. If you didn't kill somebody, you would be very adamant to say, I did not, I'm not involved in this, but none of that behavior was displayed to us in any way.
The fact that they finally track Amber down and that she's stonewalling them, she's not being helpful in spite of, they know the relationship she had with Michael. So you have to ask yourself, why is she being so hesitant, so uncooperative? At this point, police really need to appeal to her innate emotional sensibilities. The person who once upon a time she had feelings for. The idea is to drill down into whatever humanity remains and try to get her talking that way.
Her silence was almost an admission to me. She knew something was going on. Based on timelines, I knew she had an alibi as far as not being there at the time of his death. But she knew something. She knew something about Michael's death.
Despite their suspicious behavior, Justin and Amber insist they left Tucson Thursday morning, well before Michael's estimated time of death.
They have an alibi. They were out of town. I get his parents' address and phone number. I talk to his stepdad and his mother. Yes, they were up there. We knew that we were possibly letting the killer go, but we didn't have the proof. We didn't have enough evidence. They had an alibi.
And the bad blows keep coming. DNA results from the burglar's genes come back. It's a chemical, not blood. The theory of a botched burglary must now be ruled out.
Where do you go next? It's always the most frustrating wall to hit at this point in the investigation, where you've had not only one, not only two, but now 3 red herrings.
We were all confused here at that point.
Just when they think the investigation has gone cold, detectives get the break they need.
The day after we let Justin and Amber go, Eli came to us.
Eli Curiel was Michael's best friend. He'd been out of town and only learned of the murder on the nightly news.
I was more than shocked. It was unbelievable to me. Michael had extremely good energy. He was a charismatic person. He was different than other yoga instructors, and that's what people liked about him. He was always a very cheerful guy, greeting everybody. And most of his class, the students were women. They loved Michael because he was so friendly, and he loved women too, so there was that perfect harmony. And he never missed any of his classes. Always there for everybody.
While attending a memorial service for Michael, Eli spoke with fellow members of the yoga community about the last time they saw their friend.
And they said, well, you know, he didn't show up for his yoga class on Thursdays, and he always shows up. He never misses classes. He didn't show up. I said, that's strange, because I just saw him the night before on Wednesday night. He said, well, you may have been the last person to see him because he didn't show up to any of his classes on Thursday.
If Michael was with Eli on Wednesday night and never showed up for yoga classes on Thursday, why was his body not found until Friday? What happened in those last 24 hours?
So this pocket of time we're talking about here is crucial.
Essentially, they need to go back to the drawing board, and at the worst possible time.
After multiple dead ends, detectives get a promising new lead. A credible account of Michael's last hours.
It was customary for the students in this particular Wednesday night class to go to this local bar on 4th Avenue every week.
And there was maybe 5 or 6 of us from the class, including Amber, because Michael had invited Amber to come join us at the first bar. So we got there probably a little after 7.
Eli explained to us that it was common knowledge that Amber was married. Michael knew of this. She was willing to leave her husband for Michael. But according to Eli, Michael didn't want that type of relationship. He was happy with the way things were.
The more I got to know Michael and Amber, I could tell that they weren't what I would call a happy couple. I got the feeling that Michael was interested in the relationship purely from a physical standpoint, whereas I think Amber wanted something a little bit more.
Detectives ask Eli to describe their interactions on Wednesday night, the last time he saw Michael.
So we had our drinks, and I suggested that we go to another place. No one else wanted to go except Michael and Amber. As Michael walked with us to the door, he said, "See you later. I'll meet you at the bar." Just like that. And Amber just looked shocked, like, "What, you're not gonna walk me to my car, or my truck?" He says, "No, I'll just see you there. I know where it's at." And she kind of was taken aback by that. She was very disappointed. And she is complaining and crying, saying, "Oh, Michael doesn't love me. He didn't walk me to my car." So we show up at the next place. We order up our drinks and everything seems fine. You know, Amber's not crying anymore and they seem like they're friendly again and they're chit-chatting and everything seems just great. Before too long, Amber started in on Michael, arguing with him, asking why he didn't walk her to her car, and so it started getting a little angry there. It was about 10-ish, and I knew that it was going to get ugly because I had seen what happened earlier with me. So I said, I'm out of here. I'm going to go home. I got to work the next day anyway because this is a Wednesday night.
Armed with new information about Amber and Michael's relationship, Detective Jimenez re-examines the timeline of Michael's death.
After interviewing Eli, I meet with the medical examiner. I tell the medical examiner the new facts, that the last time Michael was seen alive was late Wednesday night. Amber's leaving town on early Thursday morning, according to Amber and her boss, and according to Justin. So based on that, the medical examiner and I decide and discuss that it's very possible that Michael had gone into rigor mortis and had gone back out.
While uncommon, it's not unheard of for a body to go in and out of rigor mortis depending on the processes acting on the body. It can be significantly sped up when the body is in a warmer environment, in water. And in this case, we see when a body is outdoors in the heat. So when you have these fluctuations, it's in and it's out, it's a moving timeline.
It was that point in time when we realized and remembered that there was larva in Michael's eyes at the time we found him. And larva usually comes in after flies have laid their eggs, possibly a day later.
It's what's called forensic entomology, which is the study of insects and what insects burrow in and nest and reproduce in a dead body at what time. The fact that that was missed in this case is an initial disappointment.
So we're really deciding at this point that our timeline was off. We thought we had a fresh murder victim, and we did not. It was troubling in the sense that, we never were wrong like that.
Detectives first thought Michael died late Thursday night, early Friday morning. Armed with this new information, they now believe that Michael was killed between 10:30 p.m. on Wednesday night and 3:30 a.m. on Thursday morning, a full 24 hours earlier.
The suspect pool, when your time of death is off by over 24 hours, immediately shifts. And in this case, we see it actually expand significantly because people who had been ruled out because of their alibis are now in play once again.
After our timeline shifted to the correct timeline, it was very consistent with Amber and Michael being together Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. And then we find him a day later on Friday. Michael's dead and laid on his porch for a full day.
Now we look at Amber and say, okay, she not only has motive, but now we know she had an opportunity to kill him.
Detectives revisit the crime scene, looking for evidence to support their theory that Amber was the murderer.
You have to get pretty close to where the neighbor did in order to see Michael land there. Very likely that people had walked by that same area and just didn't look over there. The machine noises that the neighbor heard on Thursday from 2:30 to 4 p.m., he was hearing the automatic compressor go on and off. When it dropped down in pressure, it would automatically kick on and it would make that noise. So the neighbor assumed that Michael was in there doing his work.
Investigators determined that Michael's body could have easily been hidden from view for an entire day before it was found.
Well, all this stuff is going on. We get a phone call from Justin's stepfather in Sholo. He was a former police officer. And what he tells us is that Amber was very peculiar when she was up there all those days, those 3 days alone. She stayed in a guest house next door to their property, and he would see Amber taking walks. He'd never seen Amber take walks before, so he decided to kind of trace her steps as to where she went.
And he was walking around, he saw some rocks that were in the wrong place from where he'd left them, because it was a very meticulous landscaping job that this man had done. And so he looked in the rocks and he saw a gun.
It was a .38 caliber .357 revolver hidden in the dirt underneath the rocks. So at this point, we're thinking, we have what we need. We go out there and secure the weapon. There is still blood in the barrel of the weapon, which is somewhat common in close-range shots. We bring it back down to Tucson and we do immediate ballistics test on it. I was present when the ballistics test was done, along with a medical examiner. The test fire was very consistent and almost identical to the wound in Michael's forehead. It was really eerie. I'd never seen anything like that in my life, and the doctor as well. We were just really surprised by that. So based on the new timeline, I instructed officers to go find Amber.
So detectives finally have enough to go on. They're ready to arrest Amber. They know that she's the killer, but they have a major problem.
She's gone.
With their killer on the run, Tucson police put out a nationwide first-degree murder arrest warrant for Amber Trudell.
So now they have motive, they have the weapon, and they need the suspect. They need Amber.
Detectives soon discover Amber has fled clear across the country.
I contacted Amber's brother in Connecticut. Yes, she was there visiting. She traded in her truck for a red Blazer.
But Amber isn't in Connecticut anymore. Investigators suspect she's headed for her grandmother's residence in upstate New York, right on the border with Canada. U.S. Marshals move in.
That's when they found Amber. She was at her grandmother's house in New York.
Well, she almost got away with it.
She is packed up. She had thousands of dollars on her. So they felt that she was probably going to flee.
Ben and I both were very happy that she'd been caught before she got into Canada. She was extradited to Arizona and brought back to stand trial and to face justice.
Detectives now believe they know what happened to Michael DeHakis in the final 24 hours of his life. On Wednesday, September 24, 2003, Eli, Amber, and Michael met up at a bar.
That's when Amber started, she'd been drinking, and she was somewhat upset, almost crying that Michael didn't want to have the type of relationship that she wanted to. And Eli was telling Amber, well, you're married, and Michael's been married before. He doesn't want that type of relationship. Why don't you just leave things as it is? You guys get along really well, and Amber wanted more. So after they left the first bar, they all drove separate cars to the second bar, which was miles down the road. And it was around 10 o'clock at night when Eli left that bar.
Michael and Amber leave the bar at midnight and go back to Michael's house.
You have a fight that occurred in the kitchen. Amber throws a drinking glass at Michael. It misses and goes through the window. The drinking glass is found outside. There's a broken plate in the kitchen. It's all consistent with the domestic violence occurring there. There was some struggle. They had scratch marks on Michael's arm. She had a little mouse on her eye. I believe they're out on the front porch. She's about 2 to 3 feet away. She pulls out her gun and shoots him right in the forehead. It would make sense, the type of wound that we had, and he falls right there, and she leaves. She got home early Thursday morning. She was upset and drunk.
She tells her husband, Justin, that she's done something terrible and she needs to leave town now.
So Justin took her up to his parents' house in Show Low, which is about 4 hours north of Tucson.
On Thursday, Michael's body lays on the front stoop of his house for over 24 hours.
The neighbor was walking by and looked over and could see someone laying face up on the porch and called 911 immediately.
It'd be interesting to have a conversation with Amber to see what her motivation may be. In this scenario, I think that whatever she was looking for, she didn't get. She became enraged and then retaliated.
Amber could have gotten away with murder had they not figured out that the initial timeline had been off by a day.
Amber is convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to 13 years in prison.
I thought she should have been convicted of first-degree murder. To me, it'd be a cold-blooded murder because he was unarmed at that point.
I met and talked to one of Michael's daughters, and they weren't real happy with the 13-year sentence because after 13 years, she's free, and they still don't have their father.
While the sentence may not seem just, investigators succeed in putting Michael DeHakis' killer behind bars.
The timeline was the most important factor in this case once we were able to focus on it correctly. Now that it's all over with, I look back and I don't believe a mistake was made in any way because of what we were dealing with.
I know of only a handful of cases worldwide where the time of death has had to be changed to 24 hours, a full day prior to what was initially thought.
We felt that Eli broke the case for us because he had the most reliable information as to when the last time Michael was alive. Eli Curiel was probably the star in this case.
If I hadn't gone to the service or talked with friends, I wouldn't have known that I had a valuable part of the puzzle to give to the detective so he could solve the case.
I met the family and they were very, very appreciative of the fact that, you know, their killer was captured. It brings closure. I think, you know, closure is a little overrated. You know, how could you ever forget that you lost a loved one?
I have to make peace knowing that Michael is still okay. He's up there somewhere and smiling down on us and hoping that we'll meet again someday.